How's it going, guys? Miguel here from CFS Recovery. In this video, we're going to be chatting with Krista. She has been on a crazy, wild 2.5-year journey, diagnosed with CFS, diagnosed with long COVID, and she tried even more things than me, as you guys will hear. And it's just a super inspiring story. She's well on her way to recovery. She's made so much progress in just the last few months. So I really wanted to bring her on here just to show you guys what's possible in just a short amount of time. Now, she's someone who just dove deep into this and gave it 110%. And I think that is contributing to a lot of her progress. But, I don't want to take too much of the time, but Krista, you want to just introduce yourself really quickly?
Thanks so much, Miguel, for this and for having me share my story. It means so much. It's truly been a long haul for everyone. I am Krista. I'm 40 years old. I'm in California, United States. And I became ill with COVID in July of 2020. And I never really recovered. I went on to be diagnosed with long COVID and then finally received the diagnosis of myalgic encephalomyelitis or chronic fatigue syndrome. And I kind of assume everyone watching this knows what CFS or ME/CFS is, but for anyone who doesn't, it is classified as a neurological disorder by the World Health Organization, and it really is considered a complex multi-system illness. And that's what I got.
That's perfect. So let's rewind the clock a little bit here to right when you got long COVID, or right when you got COVID, because that's what kicked this whole thing off. Leading up to that, what was your life like? Because usually when people get hit with something like this, there's usually a buildup. But what was your life like leading up to getting COVID? Like in the previous few years, because I know mine, right when I hit that wall and my body was like, nope, you're not going anymore. We're shutting this party down. When this whole thing kicked off for me, leading up to that, I was super stressed for about 2 years, just completely pushing my limits, and I just couldn't sleep. And then little by little, the symptoms built up until it was just my body just hit a wall. But what was it like for you?
So, at least upon just kind of superficially examining my life, my story when I first got COVID was that, I was a relatively healthy, normal-ish person, and upon more consideration and examination of where I was at in my life, that's not fully accurate. Yes, I was working full-time, but I was working full-time 10 to 12-hour days. I was working as a physical therapist in a really fast-paced, really busy outpatient orthopedic office. I was spending my weekends not only working out, maintaining my house, taking care of my pets, doing all of these things, but I was also doing all my paperwork and medical documentation, easily sometimes 4 to 8 hours a day on the weekend. Like I wasn't sleeping. And I marked my health by my activity, kind of. When I went into this, I was doing yoga for my back injury. I was doing Pilates. The day before I had symptoms of COVID, I came back from a 15-mile walk. And this is while I knew my partner was sick. And I was still out there. I was like, well, I'm off quarantining. Let me go hit the trails. Kind of that go mentality. And that was certainly stressful. It wasn't unusual for me to go take like a 5 a.m. boot camp class. And I actually had invested and got my own spin bike, like indoor cycling bike, one of those that connect to the internet. So also wasn't uncommon for me to get up at 4:30 a.m., hop on the bike, do an hour and a half, then go do a 10, 12-hour day. So there was already kind of these pre-existing behaviors that kind of had set me up into this like boom bust cycle in my life. And I was also very perfectionistic and type A personality, even though this is kind of the funny thing is I never thought of myself as a type A person. And I was telling Brent, he's like, you're kidding. I never thought of myself as a type A person, but looking back over my academic record, I have 1 A- from the time I entered college to the time I finished my doctorate. And I'm like,
holy cow,
I'm not a perfectionist. Talk about some sort of cognitive dissonance there that I couldn't recognize that in myself. So I was under extreme amounts of stress, and I was starting to have, my mental health was not ideal. I was struggling with some mental health things that were coming up. And so I can kind of see that these patterns were putting me in risk of having a more complicated trajectory with this illness. That was a lot of stress.
So yeah, you were in a pretty stressed place, and you were very active, it sounds like, right before you got hit with COVID. To be able to even work that much and stay active, do boot camps and all that, your body is in a pretty what do you call it, anti-fragile state. If you can do that amount of stuff, obviously it's probably not sustainable to do that long term. But when COVID hit, what was that like? Did you feel it completely knock you on your butt and then you got a little bit better and then it just hold you back down, or what did that look like?
No, when I got COVID, it hit like a semi truck, and it hit my GI first, which is really interesting. I was out driving and all of a sudden was like, I'm gonna throw up. I need to get home. Like, I'm about to be violently ill. And from then I was just kind of careened into just this place with a lot of really scary neurological symptoms pretty straight away. I never developed like the fever and a lot of coughing or anything like that, but it did cause lung damage for me. It's like I kind of came, like I went deep down, deep crash, and then like kind of came to the surface enough to try to go back to work. And then within a few days of trying to return to work, I was off and I was worse than I was when I had first gone off for the illness. That was a very scary, dark place. I came home, I couldn't even call my work. My partner Brent had to do that. I literally could not write and spell my first name for the disability paperwork that my doctor wanted me to fill out. I looked at notes from like one of my telehealth visits, and it's like the scrawlings of, it looks like the scrawlings of someone who has had a traumatic brain injury or a massive stroke and can't make that connection. It's so bizarre to see that. And it was really scary because you don't know what's happening. And it just kind of progressed. I had a lot of neuropsychiatric kind of symptoms myself personally, and a lot of cognitive impairment, just off the wall cognitive impairment.
Crazy brain fog, like even writing issues, spelling simple stuff, like your brain just wouldn't connect with your body kind of.
Absolutely. Like the word finding, like I tried to have a sense of humor with it, but it's really scary when you're trying to communicate and you turn to someone to say a word and you can't, there's nothing there. There's just an emptiness. It's unlike anything I could imagine most people could understand. And, you know, there were funny moments trying to make salad one day and we have the lettuce there and I couldn't think of what the word for lettuce was. And I was like, can I have some water leaves? You know, there's like these little funny moments, but it all creates this evidence of how like dysfunctional you are. And you really start to look at yourself through this like lens of pathology, and almost every behavior started to feed into that. It is very real. You know, things just like executive function around the house, trying to make a sandwich. That was, not only did other symptoms of fatigue limit that, but like I couldn't do the sequencing for the task to make a sandwich. I would find like cleaning products for wiping off the stove, the oven top. I would find that in the refrigerator, like later that day or the next morning. Or
like you didn't explode or anything.
Seriously, you know, I'm like, oh my gosh. This one's like kind of a funny one too, but it like wasn't funny at all in the moment, but it's funny now. It's like I had gone to the restroom and went to flush the toilet and didn't flush the toilet. I did in fact turn off the light switch, and then like the lights go off, right? And I'm like, did the power go out? Like what happened? And then it was almost more scary when I realized that the power hadn't gone out and it was in fact me that had not done the task I was intending, you know, but it's just that is endless. It becomes so endless. And then the fear around it, like I have early onset dementia, or I have, I don't know, do I have lesions in my brain? Am I like post-viral multiple sclerosis, MS, or, you know, what's going on? Is this post-viral Guillain-Barré? What kind of neurological early onset Parkinson's? What is happening to me? What is going on? So that was a lot of mine, a lot of tremors early on that actually got better sooner than some of the other things, but I would just have like intention tremors if I went to go pick up a pen or anything like that. My hands would just constantly shake. It was really scary.
Yeah, it's terrifying. And especially when you don't know what's going on. So you got a little bit better and then you fell back to even worse than you were before, and your symptoms are flaring up. You don't know what's going on. What was it like trying to find an answer from, you know, the medical system? Because I know you've been on the craziest journey with the medical system, probably crazier journey than me. You actually went to these special, clinics and all that. What was that like? How many doctors would you say that you visited in trying to find this in the last 2.5 years?
It really has been like an epic journey. So many professionals. I can kind of go down, I have a little bit of a list organized for you. So yeah, I absolutely have had a phenomenal journey through the medical system. And I feel that on one hand, I was really lucky going into it because I do have some of the background knowledge in healthcare as being a physical therapist. And in some ways that also got in my way. But I was fortunate to get into not only one, but two different long COVID clinics. I first started out at Cedars-Sinai, a really reputable, well-known medical research facility. And I saw some of their professionals there, saw infectious disease and cardiology. And that was the first time I heard, well, your heart's perfect. It's like literally perfect. They can't even explain why I don't have any plaque buildup in my arteries that they would expect for someone who's in their 40s. Like, my heart's in perfect shape. And I was like, no, that can't be true. Like, I'm having 143 beat per minute heart rate, just brushing my teeth with an electric toothbrush. Like, something's wrong. So I stopped my care at Cedars-Sinai in part because of the travel time and not tolerating that well, and restarted care at UCLA's long COVID clinic. And that's through a really well-known university here in California. And I feel that the long COVID clinics are really important in one way. There's a lot of validation for the illness. You're not sorting through and trying to find doctors that believe in the illness. You have people that are already aware of this. So you're not fighting to prove yourself. And I think that is very important for the illness. But for people that are holding out hope that the long COVID clinic is going to be some remarkable cure-all treatment, it wasn't that at all. The coordinator of the program, kind of tells you, okay, you need to go to infectious disease, or you need to go to pulmonology, or you need to go to cardiology, but then they just send you out. And truly the only medicine I have for symptom management from the actual UCLA long COVID clinic is Claritin. It's like an over-the-counter allergy medicine.
No way. That's what they gave you?
That's literally what I have, and from them that they're prescribing. I'm on a ton of other meds, but those are from not the long COVID clinic. So I ended up staying with UCLA, but all my doctors are outside of the long COVID clinic for the most part.
Yeah.
So if people are looking to that, they're holding out hope, like, oh, I'm on the wait list. Like, once I get into the long COVID clinic, that's where the answers are going to be. It's not necessarily the case. Like, you should get all those things screened to rule out, you should get an MRI of your brain if you're having the issues that I'm having. You need to rule out that there's not something else going on. But beyond that, there isn't a cure, there isn't a treatment for this other than symptom management. They're going to give you, I can share a little bit about what they gave me, things like SSRIs, injectables, monthly injections to manage the severe migraines.
Right now, most of the medical system, they do great things. They save a lot of lives. But when it comes to something like a hypersensitive nervous system issue, it's extremely rare that I hear people tell me that, yeah, they told me it's a hypersensitive nervous system. They told me it's CFS. They told me it's this, that I need to do a lot of neuroplastic training. Usually when I get on a call with somebody when they're applying for the program, or just talking to them in general on YouTube, in the comment section, on Instagram, they have never ever heard of this kind of stuff before, at least at the level that I'm talking about. And maybe if they did hear about it, then they probably fix them, which is why they're probably not on YouTube. But there's so many freaking people who have no idea that this whole approach exists, this whole neuroplastic approach. And despite how many doctors there are out there, this is like newer stuff. Essentially, it's a newer area of focus that not a lot of doctors know about. So if you had to guesstimate how many doctors you saw, doctors, specialists, all of those, to try and figure out what's going on with you, how many would you say?
At UCLA alone, I've seen over 20 different specialists, and that's not counting
just at UCLA.
Was just at UCLA, and that's not counting functional medicine, the 5 acupuncturists, the 4 PTs, my own experience as a physical therapist. Like, no one knows. I had one rheumatologist at the very end who was like, it is ME/CFS, and she just kind of glazed over and touched on that you have to be really mentally tough to get through this illness. But that was the extent of it. Nothing about the brain retraining, no resources. Really, you're on your own. You're just out there on your own, it feels like.
Yeah. And so for you, when they told you that you actually have ME/CFS, because a lot of people, they don't actually get diagnosed with it. It's pretty much self-diagnosed by process of elimination, but they actually told you you have this. What was going through your mind at the time? Because I'm sure you're probably researching a lot of this stuff and then coming across some scary stuff online about the whole CFS community. What was going through your mind when they told you had this?
So when I found out that it was really ME/CFS, so it's quite an impactful thing. I had been out in the research already, and I'd been in support groups for both the long COVID world and the ME/CFS. And, ME/CFS, if you look into that online, there's a lot of really dark, hopeless case scenarios out there. You're hearing things like, no one recovers from this. There's no cure. There's no hope. You could do one thing wrong and you could end up stuck in that dark room that we all know. You could end up with feeding tubes. You know, you could overextend yourself that one moment, and then that could be the moment that you just live or don't live at all. You exist in this darkened room in agony, where things like your fingernails hurt and your skin feels like it's on fire, all of that stuff. But all it could take is you carried one too many like groceries up the stairs or any little thing, really. So it creates this real fear. That's going to be your reality. And that all certainly flashed in my mind.
And you had to deal with a lot of those dark room days, right? You know, not to bring up just certain events in the past, but when you were at your lowest, just so people know where you're coming from, because they'll see you today and they'll be like, oh, she's sitting up, she looks fine. Like, follow her on Instagram, she's going on these like 1 to 2 kilometer hikes or 2-mile hikes, you guys say in the States. So they might not actually believe that you were that sick. They might say, oh, well, Krista's different, I had it worse than her. So when you were in the trenches, what did a day look like, or what did a week look like? What did that picture look like?
And that is such a part of this illness that is so hard, is people don't see all the behind the scenes that happens. And I was easily over 90% housebound. I would only leave the house in a week if I had medical appointments, or like occasionally to maybe go get a small amount of groceries or something. Otherwise, I was relying on delivery. Oftentimes closed in a room, feeling like you have the worst flu of your life, with like blackout curtains drawn in the dark because I couldn't tolerate light or sound. Nauseous. It just really took out my GI. I had so much pain, abdominal pain, IBS symptoms. And I think for me, like all of the sensory sensitivities that went on with the nerve pain of it, like I couldn't tolerate a lot of my clothes. I couldn't wear anything that like touched my neck or touched my rib cage, or like anything like that was just, it might as well have been barbed wire. Sound, and you're not listening to music. I couldn't tolerate a movie. I couldn't even really tolerate like much of like YouTube or anything, even podcasts. I had a lot of like auditory sensitivity. It's really, you're in this kind of sensory deprivation nightmare.
And I guess the doctors were kind of trying to treat it, right? And you were trying so many different things. I've seen some of your Instagram stories and posts, but the amount of supplements and medications you were trying was like through the roof. Because at one point you were taking well over 10 medications, right? Supplements.
Oh yeah.
Maybe like 20. It was a crazy number, right?
I have like a whole other list for you also. And I know we won't post that in terms of all the names of the medications, but like we can see we've got, that's like all the meds and supplements I was taking when I started with you.
Really? You were taking all of those 3 months ago?
This is my list today.
Oh yeah, put it up a little bit. Okay, so it's like half.
It's mostly vitamins.
Oh, mostly vitamins. Yeah, I
and
see.
Like 2 are the inhalers. So it's like, and the other stuff is like Benadryl and Claritin. Like there's really not all of these heavy meds that I was on before. It's amazing. It's like wild.
That's crazy. And yeah, let's go to 3 months ago, like right before we started this program, because you've been in the program at this point 86 days.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Exactly 86 days, not even 3 months in. But, you know, what made you want to join Recovery Jumpstart? Because you applied, we went through the application process, and you joined probably 3 weeks before we kicked off the actual first call. What made you want to join Recovery Jumpstart?
There are so many things that added up to my decision to join Recovery Jumpstart. One of the big things was no one else was offering any solutions to this. I had tried myself to rehab myself twice and ended up like mega crashing myself. Doctors, nobody had any answers. I'd kind of teased it out relatively early on in the illness that it was a nervous system dysfunction, because nothing else really made sense. You're not going to have that kind of heart rate variability and blood pressure variability.
Yeah, if it's something else, if it's like high blood pressure, you have high blood pressure 24/7. It doesn't like fluctuate. Like it
and mine would tank, and then it would go super high, and then same with the heart rate. I'd get in the 40s, and then I'd get in like the 210, and it would just be going all over. And I have it in some of my old notes where it just says autonomic nervous system ? But I had no idea, how do you tackle that? How do you address that issue? You don't rehab an ME/CFS body like you do a normal body, and I needed the answers, and I felt like you had them. And that's one of the things that I feel like also that Recovery Jumpstart does that I haven't seen anywhere else. You take what's out there, these abundant, complex neuroscience concepts, and then you don't make anyone learn anything about neuroscience. You take like the core essence of that and you streamline it into this kind of like perfect, simple essence of the thing. And that makes it so much more doable. I think I recognized in myself that I was an overthinker, an overanalyzer. I was jumping into the research, and you had one video where it's like, you know, you're trying to solve the POTS, trying to solve the MCAS, you're trying to solve, you know, like all of these things that you think you have, is it fibromyalgia, or that you've been told you may have by doctors. And you had this one video and it said like the real answer is the hypersensitive nervous system. And I was like, he knows what it is. And that like gives me chills. That was like an aha moment for me. I was like, someone finally is understanding what I'm going through and they've got it figured out. And that was just incredible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I remember that exact video, solving the puzzle of CFS, because that's pretty much what it is, especially if you have gotten all these other tests and scans and you ruled out any other health issues. It's got to be the nervous system. There's no other answer that makes sense. So you saw my stuff, you came across my videos, you applied for the program just because I think you mentioned the simplicity of the information, the way it was delivered.
And I think that's like such a key thing in how you deliver all the information, is when you're in that brain fog, cognitive dysfunction place, you're not going to watch a complex, long video and get anything meaningful out of that in terms of recovery. And I saw that in your videos and then in your book, that like you have this tailored to someone that is in the thick of this illness. And that resonated with me too. It's like, I don't think that was like such a big thing for me. I don't think you can write that way or record the way that you do if you don't understand what the person on the other side of the video is going through. And you capture that like in such an incredible way. Yours is the first book I've been able to read in 2.5 years. Like it brought me like so much joy to be able to do that. And I learned so much.
Yeah. And I specifically wrote it that way. And I appreciate you saying that. Double spaced, bigger font size, watered down, not watered down, but like simplified content. I was telling another person this, but the original book was like 300 pages long. And I was like, does it really need to be 300 pages? Because by the time they hit page 100, their brain fog is kicked in. They've forgotten the first 50 pages anyways. So let's shorten this. And that's what we try to do with the program too. It's like a lot of the videos, they're a few minutes long. It's really all you need versus like an hour long. So we really try to simplify it.
And I have like a lot of other things that I kind of want to speak to you on the program. So while I have the honor of being here, I do want to just talk a little bit about the program, if that's okay, and what's really been amazing for me. And I'm going to say it again. So I'm blown away by how you've been able to take these really complex neuroscience concepts and make them digestible and functional and usable. I think that is the big thing. I also really, really like the way that you have the pre-recorded modules set up. Like that has been awesome. I could go back and watch them on days when my brain wasn't working. I could do them on my own time. I wasn't set in any kind of rigid structure with that. And then we would have the calls to reinforce that. And the calls have absolutely been a game changer between the access to you and this international support group of people that are going through it. It's just, illness is so isolating and it's so lonely and nobody really understands what you're going through. So to be in a group of people that know what you're going through and you're not trying to convince anyone and they understand is healing in itself, I think. And I feel like there's so much depth to your program that, like having this group of people is also part of the recovery. Like it's part of the neuroscience too. We kind of touched on it on a call that like social isolation and being alone like that causes like reduction in gray matter in the brain. We know it causes detrimental adverse changes in like the structure of the brain, not like any kind of floofy thing, like literally structurally changes. And part of coming out of this illness, I believe, is found in the support group. And, when you're chronically ill for this long, and most of us for so many years, you lose a sense of self. Like you don't have a lot of, or I didn't, and I think this might be true for a lot of us, you don't have a lot of the self-worth that you had, or the identity, or the feelings of bringing anything of value to the people around you. And this group of thrivers, like from kind of the get-go, you're learning from each other and you're helping each other. And every single call, I have learned something profound. Like it's been just amazing the way that you have this all organized is just mind-blowing to me.
And yeah, we try to have these calls just to keep people on track, especially, when you're gaining momentum, just to keep building that momentum, or when you have symptoms flaring up, having adjustment periods, which is completely normal. These calls really help bring people back to basics and help them understand that, hey, just a reminder, you feeling symptoms right now, this is very normal. So to have that extra support, it's almost like having that safety net with the group calls, as well as, access to the coaches is huge.
Yeah.
Right? You can turn to us for any extra help.
And just that you haven't, it's beyond the 6 weeks. You make so many gains in those 6 weeks, but it doesn't stop then. You're not just like, well, there you go, good luck, bye. This is a resource for as long as we need it. And that also blows my mind. You're like, you're either a genius or you're insane. And I think it's both. No. It's amazing. Sorry.
Yeah, it's been awesome, like building this program. For you, what would you say is different now, like today, than before you joined? Like, paint us a picture where you were back in August 3 months ago, just over 3 months ago, and where you are now. Like, what were your capabilities before and what are they now? Just to paint a picture for people.
About 3.5 months ago, I was just absolutely housebound. And I say housebound, I'm hesitant to say bedbound, but that was kind of the reality of it, is I was at home in bed. It wasn't like I could even feel comfortable going to sit up, or I didn't even really sit on the couch. It wasn't comfortable, it hurt. I really still had pretty extreme, often debilitating fatigue. It just really felt like my body was full, like just soaked in cement or something, just had weights hanging on it. Like, I would be in bed and lying on my side and like try to lift up my cell phone, and I couldn't even lift my phone. I didn't have the orthostatic tolerance to stand and cook. I mean, even like simple, like I wasn't even going to heat up soup on the stove. Like, that just wasn't going to happen. Yeah.
And showering was really difficult for you, right?
I couldn't shower. I had no like activity tolerance like that. Like, showering was like, that was awesome if it happened once a week. I had to get a shower chair. I have like the extender hose on the shower. Like, washing my hair might as well have been like an extreme sport. The cognitive impairments, the brain fog was wild. That's something that is still like a struggle for me, I think, but it's like so much better. There's no way 3 months ago that I could have done this interview and had any kind of clarity. And I was someone that spoke to patients, provided education on kind of advanced anatomy, knowledge, information, and I couldn't go through a drive-through, even if I wasn't driving. I couldn't order. I couldn't retain what I wanted to order. I mean, so to even be able to, with any kind of fluency, be able to have this conversation with you is night and day. I was diagnosed with POTS, and then that was kind of retracted, and they said, oh, it's dysautonomia because it's even kind of doing weirder things than we would expect with POTS. So I was still dealing with a lot of that. The heat intolerance, that's been a huge win, is now I'm able to blow dry and straighten my hair like after a warm shower. Like, I was taking cool to cold showers always because I just couldn't tolerate that. And now that it's like winter in California, it's nice to be able to have a lukewarm or warm shower and to do it standing up and to shave my legs and like do all of those things. Like, yeah. This like lasted really a lot through the early part of the program too. I still had a lot of like the weird neurological muscle like twitching and fasciculations where you just think like, am I gonna have a seizure? Like, what's my body doing? You could lay there and watch parts of my body twitch, and that doesn't happen anymore. Now a day looks like, I get up pretty, like, I think I'm a fluke on this. I get up fairly easy in the morning. I have kind of a good morning routine, and I can get up now and I can go for a walk. I think the max I've made it to is like a 3-mile walk. That was like a lot. So I'm comfortable at like 1.5 to 2 mile walks. That's fine. Then I can shower. Then I can do my hair and makeup. Then I can go to like the grocery store, or we have Target. We've talked about Target, and like, go get toiletries and that kind of stuff. Everything I was relying on delivery before. And then I went to an appointment after a follow-up with my hematologist because I'm tying up those things. I want to make sure everything's taken care of. But like before, it would have been barely make it out of bed, be grateful to brush my teeth, and maybe get to the doctor's appointment. And then expect like post-exertional malaise and a crash and like just that dark room. I'd be back in that small dark room.
So nowadays, pretty regularly, you're walking like 1 to 2 miles per day, right?
Yeah.
That's wild.
Wow.
You're walking more than me.
Like some inclines and stuff. And I know I feel like I'm a little indulgent with what you've taught me with the cognitive versus the physical. I think that I probably need to tone that down and work on the cognitive just a tiny bit more than I am. But I know it's going to come. And I mean, even, and I know this isn't the case, but even if this is as far as I got, it is infinitely better than where I was at before.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you went on like a mini vacation too, right? A mini road trip, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we drove up. Yeah, we drove up the coast. We stayed at this funky place called the Madonna Inn that's got all these different like weird theme rooms. And so we got like the caveman room, had like a waterfall rock shower. And then we were there to see one of my favorite emo bands. But yeah, we saw them and it was like this small standing room only like venue. And I can't even, like, I stood for the whole thing. It was fine for the opening and for the act we were there for. And before, like, standing for longer than like 2 to 5 minutes was going to be like 3 days of recovery. And it was fine. And not only did we do that, but then we like drove back home 2.5 hours up the coast the other way to get home afterward. And we were really pretty good. Like, there wasn't like a big blowback. It's wild.
Yeah. And there are some things on this trip you're even leaving out, like, because the loud music, right, from the concert, loud music,
so true.
Bright flashing lights. You guys were having like burgers and really good food.
Yeah,
you even had
onions.
You had a beer, right, at the concert.
Oh yeah, I had several, more than
several beers.
Yeah. And like before, the IBS was so bad, like I couldn't, between the suspected mast cell activation syndrome and the IBS issues, like just the food alone was like epic what we had. Like I couldn't have tolerated onion. That was like a no go. That was like going to be miserable, bloating, abdominal pain, bathroom trips, the food alone. And you're so right. Like, isn't it wild how like you already start to like lose perspective? It's like the lights, the flashing lights of the show, the loud music, the beers. Like if I would have had even one beer before I would have turned like hot red, I would have like started to have all of those kind of symptoms, got hot, would have had to take a Benadryl. I definitely had more than one beer and I had none of that.
Crazy.
Crazy.
And even just the driving, even just 1/10 of what you did, like would have completely wiped you out, but now you did it. And I think you had a little bit of an adjustment period after that, right? But it was, it was fine.
It was very manageable. It's not, and that's getting easier and easy going when you have those symptoms come back on. It's not to the depth that it was before.
But that's like a really, really good place you're at right now. Like being able to walk 1 to 2 miles per day, being able to like be on calls like this, being able to do groceries, cook food, just take a shower like pretty much every day. So do it without the chair. Right. So it's totally different from where you were just 3 months ago. It's amazing how much can change. And obviously it's not the easiest thing ever. Right. So maybe just touch on that. What was it like trying to implement these things? Because some people say, oh yeah, it's impossible. You can't just change like that. It can't be that simple. Well, I tell them it's like, it's actually that simple, but just because it's simple doesn't mean it's easy. Like you have to tell yourself all the time that this is just your nervous system. So what were some of the hardest parts about the last 3 months? If you had to like, what was the hardest part, getting to this point?
So I think some of the hardest things are countering a lot of the built up fear and having to be courageous enough to challenge the idea that like, okay, I'm going to push into this discomfort because there's no going around the symptoms. You have to go through this illness. You have to go through each flare or crash that we call adjustment periods. You have to go through that, but you have to hold on in that stormy place to like your own center of calm. And that was not a familiar thing to me, that I could even like have that capacity in myself to have that place of calm. It's terrifying to push into some of these symptoms in the beginning and trust that you're going to come out of the other side. But if you do that, you will.
And for people watching this right now, because I know there's going to be some comments saying, oh, but you're not supposed to push through it. It's not what we're saying. Don't push through symptoms, but you do have to face them head on. Like they're going to happen whether you like it or not. The symptoms are going to show up, and how you respond to the symptoms, as I say on this channel all the time, that's what determines your success in recovery. So for someone like you, as well as Brent, you guys kind of just jumped in head first, put your full trust in the program, and you were 110% on board. You're like, okay, we're going to do this thing. And even though sometimes there could be some doubt, especially when the symptoms are flaring up, a lot of times we can ask ourselves, is this really the answer? Did we overdo it this time? Did we bite off a little bit more than we can chew? And those thoughts will absolutely come up, but you know, you guys handle it like champs. So you're able to do a lot more physically, and you're much more capable. In terms of mentally, which is I think even more important than physically, what are some big differences now that you know that were different 3 months ago?
I can have a conversation. I can much more easily hold a train of thought. I can go out and have lunch. I can go through a drive-through driving and ordering. Like if you know that place where you can't do that stuff because of this illness, that is like a mega achievement to be able to hold the order for yourself and another person and manage the car and multitask to do that. I'm able to read a lot more. When I started the program, I like of a real book, I could probably only really get to about 3 pages. Now I can read, I mean, definitely over 20 pages. I can read more dense articles and have retention. Before I could like kind of skim and hazily read material, but I couldn't like reiterate it. I couldn't report it back. I couldn't own it at all in any way that was meaningful.
I remember, I think it was a few weeks in when we were giving people their 30-day mini challenges and giving you guys their plans. Yeah, your brain couldn't handle more than like 2 or 3 pages of certain things, but now you're reading articles and like doing lots of research, and it's cool to see how much that area has improved. So cognitive wise, yeah, major strides there. Yeah, so it's really cool because I'm able to actually see your journey unfold, not just from working directly with you, but on Instagram as well, because you're documenting a lot of your journey. And if people are following your profile for several months, they're seeing that you've gone from housebound, struggling with this doctor and this medication and that, to now going for daily hikes and walks and doing all this fun stuff. And I feel like when you're sharing a lot of your story and documenting it, there's a deep sense of like gratitude. I could tell you're super grateful for even the smallest things, even just like last night, the sunset. You're taking pictures and you're like, the sunset is amazing. And I feel like for me, that's one of the greatest gifts that CFS has gave me, is having that perspective to be grateful for even the simplest of things, because you know how low life can get, you know how dark it can be. So it makes the simple things that much more beautiful. But how did that kind of change your ways of thinking going through this journey?
I think that you touched on like the major thing, which is gratitude. I think that I am so much more grateful for every simple little thing before, I'm not rushing through my life anymore. Once I start doing more yoga and things like that, I am never going to be the person that takes it for granted. Like, I can't wait to sit and go through a couple sessions of that. And before, that was just like stuff I had to do. After going through CFS, like when you can't even get up and walk outside, you don't take another step for granted. You just don't, I don't think.
That's so true. Yep. Every single step, every breath of fresh air, it's like really good. You don't realize how good it is until you have that taken away. And there were times in my recovery where I was like 4 months in to being completely bedridden. I was like, God, universe, whatever is out there, I learned my lesson. I will appreciate things from now on. I promise. I learned my lesson. Please just help me recover. And the universe is like, oh, really? You learned a lesson? And then boom, I just sink even deeper. I get worse. And then it would just get worse and worse and worse. And just when I would say that I would learn my lessons, like it just kept hitting me. So I feel like I really learned my lesson. And even nowadays, when I get stressed out, I'm able to go back to those times that were super difficult. And this water in here can taste delicious. And I can be super grateful that I have water here. And, I don't have to worry about, oh, well, I had to go to the washroom too many times today because I couldn't even walk to the washroom before. So it's little things like that that put everything into perspective, just makes you truly grateful. So yeah,
I deeply relate to that too, about I thought I learned my lesson and I didn't, I don't know. It's amazing what it takes sometimes to really shift your perspective and to do the work you need to do.
And I ask this question to people on these calls. But, I went through it so many times where I felt like giving up, like it was hopeless. Like I was never, ever going to get better. Did you ever have those moments on your journey in the last 2.5 years?
Yeah, it got really dark. It did get really dark. It got to the point where I kind of had decided, like, if I was going to really be stuck living like this, or if it really did do the thing that everyone warned you that it could do, and really all the worst case scenarios, it's like I'm smart enough to know what medications do what. I was planning an exit route for sure if it was going to be that way.
Yeah, it can put you in a dark place, especially when you're seeing doctor after doctor and they're not really giving you answers. Feels like you're doing everything you can. You're giving 110%, but you're just getting worse. And, that's why I work so hard at these YouTube videos and the content, getting this message out to people, really just getting the information out, because I think it really does make a difference in people's lives. And this is the stuff I needed to hear from my doctor. And I feel like I won the lottery finding him. Well, I didn't really find him. The hospital just linked us together. I just happened to meet him at the right place at the right time. So that's the information I want to bring to people. So let's say there are people out there in your situation where you were 6 months, a year and a half ago, and their back was against the wall. Nothing was working. They don't know what to do. They just got diagnosed with ME, CFS, long COVID, all this stuff. They got POTS, all the same symptoms you have. What is something you would tell your old self when you were in the trenches?
Yeah, tried to think about this a lot and what would have came through to me in that place of darkness. And I feel like one thing I do want to say is that, number one, like, this is serious and this is real. Like, this is a real neurological issue. And I want to say too that there's a way out, and you don't have to be special or unique. I'm no different than you, but there is a way out, and recovery is possible.
Mm-hmm. Even though it doesn't feel like it at times, if you have gotten your tests done and gotten all your scans, obviously do your due diligence, there is a way out, right? And it's the nervous system issue. There are ways to improve it and, just really get moving in the right direction. So what would you say to someone who's sitting on the fence right now and they're thinking, maybe should I reach out and get help? Should I maybe join Recovery Jumpstart? Should I watch these YouTube videos? How do I even know what to believe? Is this channel legit? What would you say to somebody who's on the fence, ready to open their mind to ideas like this, knowing what you know now?
I would say that CFS recovery is absolutely the real deal. Miguel is the real deal. This is all like evidence, science-based practice that's happening. You're not going to find it this accessible, I don't think, anywhere else in any other program. Everything that is presented in CFS Recovery Jumpstart is evidence-based, science-backed. This is the ticket. This is the way that we interface to the nervous system. This is how we access the nervous system to make the changes in the neural networks that need to happen for the healing to happen. This is the place we do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And, I just try to simplify that recovery, because it can be very complex when you look at it scientifically, but it doesn't need to be complex. It can be very, very simple. So. Yeah.
And as an overthinker and an overanalyzer, that was like truly stuck in analysis paralysis, and I couldn't find a way to move forward. This was the light and the darkness for me. It is.
Exactly. So it's super cool to see your journey unfold, and you're just getting started. Even though you're walking 1 to 2 miles per day, you're doing a lot of stuff. You're more active, you're more independent, you're getting your life back. There's so much more room for growth here. You're walking more than me most days. I don't even walk 1 to 2 miles. And so to be able to do that is, you should feel very, very proud of yourself. You come so far.
Where I'm at today seemed like the wildest dream 3 months ago. It's a dream come true. It's amazing.
Yeah. So it's awesome. It's super, super cool to see. But is there anything else you wanted to share with people? People watching this, they're at home right now. They say they can't really leave the house, and they're just looking for inspiration. What would you tell them in terms of inspiration or something like an uplifting message?
I feel like if you're out there watching this and you're uncertain, hold on, keep watching these videos, and then reach out to Miguel, schedule a call. Don't give up. Don't believe that misinformation that's out there, that recovery isn't possible and that this is a one-way street. And that's dangerous misinformation. Get out of those dark places. Get out of those support groups where you're just hearing over and over like there's no way out. Start to take that precious energy that you have, because I know how limited that is. Don't put it into those places. Find the people that are getting out, because there is a way out. Start to use that energy to find the positive. and use that to little by little propel you in the direction, because you don't have to stay in that dark room behind those closed curtains.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. There is a way out. There's an analogy we talked about on one of the calls, but trying to navigate through CFS can feel like trying to get out of a completely dark cave with no flashlight, no sense of direction whatsoever. You're kind of just feeling the walls. You trip over something here. You don't even know if you're going in the right direction. It can feel like you're walking in a dark cave. Once you're armed with the information and you know what you need to do, it's kind of like you've been handed a flashlight and a roadmap or some kind of map to get out of there, but you still need to do the work and find your way through that cave. It can be scary. You don't know what's around the corner. Your anxiety is going to be telling you stories that, what if there's monsters in here? What if this happens? But eventually you see that light seeping from somewhere, and then you follow it. Then you get closer and closer. Next thing you know, you get out of the cave and you get back into regular life. And it's one of the best feelings you can have. And honestly, it makes the whole journey totally worth it. I think that the gifts and the lessons you learn through this illness pay for themselves tenfold. And I have this silly saying, but it's like, life is like a bouncy ball. The harder you hit rock bottom, the higher you bounce. And that's what I always told myself. So when I kept sinking deeper and deeper and deeper, I would just kind of tell myself that, okay, your life sucks right now, Miguel. And it's only getting worse and worse and worse and worse. It only has been getting worse for the last 3 years, but that means we're going to jump that much higher. At least let's believe in something. Let's try to believe in that. And it really helped me. So, you won't realize that until you come out the other side. And then it will be more and more clear that this journey strengthened your character and helped you develop as a person, not just the way you think, but the way you handle situations, the way you handle stress, the way you move throughout life. And like you said, Krista, earlier, you're not just running through life to get to the next thing. You're actually able to enjoy it and stop and smell the roses, which is literally like something you do. It's not roses, but I see you taking pictures of the flowers and posting it in the Winds channel. And that's a sign of like truly, truly being grateful. So yeah, we really appreciate having you on, Krista. It's been an amazing chat. And I think your story is super inspiring for a lot of people. There's a lot of people who are watching this right now who have just been given a long COVID diagnosis or CFS or ME diagnosis. And they're searching online and all they're seeing is this horrible information saying you'll never, ever, 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 ever get better. But we're proving that wrong with you and other people in the program. So I think it's really good to be sharing your story. And it's been great having you on. I hope you guys enjoyed this interview with Krista. We're going to do another one a few months down the road when you're even better. But I just thought this progress was too amazing not to share. And I didn't want to keep this from people. So hope you guys enjoy this video. If you did get some value out of this, make sure to hit that like button. Leave a comment down below. If you were looking to get some extra help on your recovery journey, if you needed some coaches by your side to walk you through exactly what you need to do, if you wanted to be part of a small team of people who are going to help with your recovery, then you can click the link down below. You can apply to the Recovery Jumpstart program. We're always looking for people to help. We do it by application only. There are limited spots. But if you are the right fit for the program, we would absolutely love to help you. Again, the link is down below. But always remember, guys, you are a thriver and you are just one mind shift away from living life with thriving health. See you guys in the next video.